come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from?
I am so excited to have two amazing guests for this episode. We are joined by my outgoing co-host, Joy Berry, who was my co-host all of last season, as well as Jennica Davis-Hockett of our Lifespan Faith Engagement team, to discuss how Unitarian Universalists can embrace whole church religious education as an approach and deepen community connection across generations. So, guests, I'd love it if you could tell us about who you are, a brief visual description, and maybe a little bit about where you're located, how you serve, what kind of work you do. Joy, could I invite you to go first?
Yeah, Joy Berry, she, her, Children and Families Faith Development Specialist at the Lifespan Faith Engagement Office of the UUA. I am in Western North Carolina. And let's see, today I'm wearing a headscarf. I got some colorful prints behind me on a yellow wall, some big glasses, and some perky braids. Yeah. What do I do? I've been a religious educator for many, many years, and I still see myself as a religious educator. And I mean, it's an honor to do the work that I do, and also just love being here with y'all today as colleagues. We work on the same team. We never really get a chance to just like really, shoot the chalice together. So here we go. Shoot the chat. I should have said shoot, but anyway, here we go.
Okay, so I'm Jennica Davis-Hockett. I'm sorry, I'm really stuck on shoot the chalice. I'm going to use that. Jennica, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I get to work with Joy and Ember Oak in Lifespan Faith Engagement. My big project is the community building map to deeper joy. And then I get to work closely with the New England region as their liaison, helping them support youth and emerging adult ministry and really religious education broadly in New England region. I've got white skin, wavy brown hair, a little past my shoulders with bangs and horn rimmed glasses, and I'm sitting in my living room that has a lovely kind of orange red rock color wall behind me in honor of the red rocks of southern Utah.
I was so quick and focused on my visual description that I forgot another act of preemptive radical inclusion, and that is pronouns. I use any pronouns. Joy and Jennica, what pronouns do you prefer?
She, her for me.
Oh yeah, and I use she, her also.
I am so excited for our conversation today. And specifically, you both are doing amazing work. Joy, I know you do a lot of work around the whole church religious education approach. And Jennica, you're like the lead, an awesome person around all of the work with Deeper Joy. And I would love to hear a little bit about what these projects are, what these frameworks are, and why they are so important for this moment. So, Joy, could you tell us a little bit about whole church religious education and what exactly those magical 4 words mean?
Well, if anybody wants to learn about it in a different format, I'm super excited that the UU World article, what's it called? It's not an episode, it's not a podcast. The UU World
article? Blog?
It's the whole magazine is full, a chock-a-block of faith development essays this time. One of them is specifically around whole church religious education. And although it's kind of watered down from where I'd love to see it, I couldn't help but grimace a little bit when they said it. In some churches, children are with are in worship for 5 whole minutes. It's such a range because whole church religious education is popping up everywhere. Long before we use those words, religious educators have been calling for it for literally decades. It really is an approach. I'm glad that you used that word instead of model. It is an approach that seeks to be together more in different ways, in different places, at different times in church. It seeks to live into this idea that faith development is all we do, Unitarian Universalism is all we teach, and the congregation is truly the curriculum. And in these times where the situation is so changeable, not just it's different now than it used to be, but it changes every Sunday with regard to how many people are going to be there for your RE program, how many teachers, how stretched thin is your DRE, how many hours has your DRE been cut. This is a great reason for us to think about living more deeply into our theology and learning about our shared values together. And what better way to do that? What better way to be interdependent, to be generous with each other, to be pluralistic and bringing the voices of generations into the room. And I think most of all, there is a deep yearning on my part that I will cop to see how the long siloed segregation by age in our UU churches has had both real challenges, particularly insofar as it has meant we have not actively called adults to do the work of lifelong faith development, and we haven't given them opportunities for that in the same way that we have children and youth. And those silos have also been such a blessing because this flourishing RE culture has been allowed to grow in spaces where DREs were in charge. And those blessings that we know come out of religious education, those practices, embodied practices, approaches, trauma-informed lens, relationality, depth and meaning making, and welcome, inclusivity. Those are blessings that whole church RE can bring to the congregation. So instead of asking adults to come and give to RE, I wondered what it would be like to flip that script and to really talk about how the blessings of religious education could be seen as an offering to the whole church. So we could all grow in faith together with love at the center.
I love it. And Joy, it's just so obvious you're passionate around this work. Jennica, could you tell us a little bit about Deeper Joy and what exactly Deeper Joy is? You know, is it a curriculum? Is it a set of games? What is Deeper Joy? Is it everything?
What isn't Deeper Joy, Ember Oak? That's the real question. Okay, so Deeper Joy is a compendium of games and songs, activities, practices for building radically inclusive, accessible, multi-generational spiritual communities. The name Deeper Joy comes from a resource that was developed in the 90s and early aughts called Deep Fun, which was a list of games built on Denny Ryberg's 5 stages of community building. And this Deep Fun was created by high school aged youth who were using them in their immersive cons or rallies, short for conference, that were designed by and led primarily by youth. And they were ways of doing the practice of building community in real time. And so in like 2019, I would say, our co-director, Shannon Harper, and I sat down and thought, Deep Fun was really, really cool. And since we now have these safety policies that are really quite rigorous and supportive of more safety and inclusion and accessibility in our youth ministry spaces, there's some of the stuff in Deep Fun that we wouldn't really move forward into this next generation of youth ministry. But that doesn't mean we want to throw the whole thing out, because the foundation is really, really solid. And there are also some areas that we could add to this Deep Fun resource. So we decided, it's not really stages like with some pinnacle that everybody's trying to reach like it was in Deep Fun. It's really more like emergent and non-linear. And so Shannon came up with the idea of putting it on a map instead of in a list. And then we added some components that weren't in the original that really reflected our Unitarian Universalist values. So we put in covenanting, we put in more spiritual practice. It exists in a couple of forms right now. So if you just search UUA Deeper Joy, you'll find the community building map to Deeper Joy, and you can click anywhere on the map. Like, for example, if you clicked on the Forest of Affirmation, a whole bunch of activities, games, practices would come up that would help you as a facilitator move your group into that Forest of Affirmation by games on how we affirm one another's gifts and how we affirm one another's differences. And it's also, I don't know if you know this, Ember Oak, but it's a role-playing game curriculum. There's like 26, 29 sessions of, and I have gotten, I think we're in our office, we're doing it like moving through it together to see what it's like and to see how it transforms us as a community. And I think we're on like session 6, maybe. And it's been not only like really fun to just get to play like that on our team, but I'm already like it's already transforming the work that I do with Deeper Joy. It's helped me go a little bit deeper into it. And then the last like, tangible thing that we have right now that's in the works is a deck of cards. So all the games will be transposed onto cards that then, like, let's say a youth group could use and just pull they might go, oh, we want to do something that helps us stretch out of our comfort zone a little more. Let's just pull a card from the Deeper Joy card deck and do that as an activity in youth group today. The artist for both the map and the cards is Claire Pullen, who is a visual storyteller. That's how she describes herself. And she, I wish I could I go pause this podcast, go look at the map right now because it is such a work of art. And then the cards are actually like going into the map. So instead of looking from above, you're like gazing up at the Covenant Lighthouse. It's incredible. And so the last thing I'll say is that while this came from youth ministry tradition, it's not just for youth. And I think that's actually, maybe we'll talk more about this later, but that's one of the pieces that's at the heart of how it is related to whole church religious education, because while this is from youth, it is a gift to anyone trying to build multi-generational community, because it's so key to be able to get embodied and do practices and using a pedagogy of play to like practice how we do Unitarian Universalism together.
Look at that beautiful multi-generational community. What we can bond together. It's beautiful and wonderful stuff. And
I got to come back. Sorry.
Okay.
I mean, it's wonderful. I love hearing Jennica talk about Deeper Joy, because for all the fact that we work together, we don't talk about our projects a lot together. And, I would love a chance for me and Jennica to reflect back to each other about each other's projects with regard to how it's in the faith right now. Is that okay with you, Ember? It's my last.
Your last request as a former co-host?
Yeah.
I'll allow it.
Oh, go, great. So I'll say that for me, as I think about whole church RE being a sort of vision casting that literally asks churches to explore changing the way they do church and put faith development at the center and really honor the beauty and the blessing, the power of religious education's capacity to help us learn and grow. Deeper Joy was already in the mix. As Jennica said, when I started working on Whole Church RE in 2023, Deeper Joy was already right there. And so in some ways it really informed my own thinking, because Jennica had already worked to subvert the paradigm that the church gives time, talent, and treasure to the youth. This is so powerful a move that, here's something that came out of these siloed spaces that is amazing, in part because of that. And I love the plug and play aspect. Jennica didn't use this word, and that might not be quite giving it credit, but for me, as I've thought about whole church RE and how to help people explore what it means and how it could mean different thing in different congregations, right? We're doing a little bit, we're doing it more, we're doing a lot of it. The plug and play aspect that can let people have a one-pager or card deck. I love that. I can't wait to see that, especially with Claire Pullen. But to connect with each other in this very low stakes, a low barrier to access way in many different spaces, and do something there together that is a deeply implied curriculum that is very relational, but also has a faith development depth to it. That just is so exciting. The one piece of deeper joy I've most recently was sort of like dressing up a little bit as whole church so that I could also highlight it on the whole church area, is about kitchen connections. What could you do in the kitchen, for example, with youth or kids? What would happen there that doesn't normally happen in a kitchen? So that's an example of like the way that deeper joy for me, and I haven't read every single lesson, but the way that it encourages people to explore and experiment, be curious, and to play and have some fun, and not be stuck in like, how boring does church have to be to matter? And yeah, I was really inspired by that. So anyway, I don't know that I've actually said thank you, Jennica. I know you're not the only person who's worked on it. And Ember, I love the RPG edition. I cannot wait. I know it's coming. The full thing is coming out soon, so I'll be able to brag on you another time. But yeah, the way these things are coming together is very meta whole church, right? So anyway, thank you, Jennica, for the work that you've done to bring out this new resource, because it's more than a resource. It really is a new approach to how we're coming together.
Well, and thank you, Joy. And as it continues to be developed, I'm really inspired by just the vision of what do the young people have to share with the rest of the congregation. And I had this moment last weekend. Maybe I should have checked with Amanda Adams to ask if I could highlight her in the podcast before I shared, but I'll make sure to do that before this goes live. But I just want, I have to lift this up. So Amanda Adams is the Director of Community Engagement at the First Parish of Norwell in Massachusetts. And that's where I was this last weekend. And she, during the Time for All Ages, all the young folks came up to the front of the room, and she had invited some of them to serve as volunteers holding one of the 7 shared values, and then another set of volunteers to hold the values of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And then she said, all right, how then, for the folks who weren't holding one of the signs, for the young folks, she said, okay, how might one of our shared values relate to one of these other values that we're talking about in the service and in our religious education classes today? And then one of the kids was like, oh, I see how diversity is related to interdependence because of da, 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 da. So she said, okay, grab diversity, grab interdependence's hand. And so they did. And then they went through and were just connecting hand over hand over hand until they were in this beautiful tangled web. And in my mind, I was like, oh, this is the human knot game that is probably from the theater tradition that we've played in youth groups and at cons for decades and decades. So is there a way that we could now, I could use this frame of connecting our shared values into this human knot that then you can untangle, and that becomes a deeper joy game. So it's just like talking about the congregation is the curriculum. I think, like, when we say the congregation, what is the congregation but a series of interconnected relationships? And so if the relationships are the congregation, then everything we do, what we model, how we interact with each other, that is the curriculum.
The congregation is the curriculum. Imagine what you could learn from each other, But as you were talking about relationships, one of the things that happened is, so as I started in this position in April of 2024, that was right when Deeper Joy was first launching. And so, new to the job and trying to understand my coworkers, I quickly hop on and I'm like, okay, what is Deeper Joy? I need to understand. And was like, okay, this is awesome that we're getting these activities out into people's hands, because it's so often that you might have a little bit of a down moment. I think about a dinner church experience that I used to be involved with back in the mid 2010s, and how it would have been great to have something like the Deeper Joy cards to be like, okay, we're having a down moment, let's do an activity together, instead of having to pre-plan, okay, what activity might be interesting, instead of being able to be okay, here's where things are feeling out. It's just, it's wonderful how this approach, both Whole Church RE and Deeper Joy, are so much about being adaptive, modular, flexible, letting us know that, like, we can have the structure, we can have curriculum, we can have a format, but we can do it in ways that are adaptive and that let us adjust to the way that the realities are in our congregations. And so I started in the position, and I get to see this beautiful map, and it truly is. If you've not paused already, now's another chance to pause and go look at the beautiful map. And someone commented on Jennica sharing out the map and said, wow, this map would be great for a role-playing game. And in a previous position, I had started some ideating on how to do a role-playing game curriculum with some very loose testing of some concepts. And I reach out to Jennica after that. I'm like, hey, Jennica, what if we made a role-playing game related to this? Because one of my focuses in my work is focusing on community building as such a key part of our youth and emerging adult leadership experience, and how just showing up for your community is an act of leadership, that we don't have to have some special role, but working on building community together is such an important part of the lives of our congregations. And so, as has already been mentioned, I started work and now is soon to be releasing the Journeys of Deeper Joy, the Deeper Joy role-playing game, coming in the next few months, folks. And so in honor of that, this year, I'm planning on inserting a little role-playing into each of our podcast sessions. And so I'm imagining we're in a world where there's magical items. I mean, there could be magical items in our regular world as well. But let's imagine that we can each gift one magical item to UU congregations trying to live more into this whole church experience, live into the same principles of deeper joy. We're gifting them one thing that will help them better strive towards that as like as a vision of what they want to move towards. What is that magical item, and what power does it hold? Could I call on Jennica first?
Yes. Okay. So the character that I've built for the role-playing game that we're playing in the office has an item that I think fits really well with this. Like, what could a gift to religious educators be? And it's a periscope. And the periscope I am using in the game to like look around the corners. So not only the corners of the past, so we can see where we've come from, and you can look around the corner to the future to get a glimpse of what might be. And spoiler, the team doesn't know this yet, but the periscope can turn into a kaleidoscope. So not only are you looking around the corner to the future, but you can see like multiple dimensions of what the future could be so that you can bring it alive in the present.
Wow.
As the facilitator of that RPG session, I'm going to forget that you just said that so that you can surprise me when you come up with that as well. Joy, what about you?
Oh, well, I love the hippy dippy trippy nature of what Jennica just described, because that is it. We need all the creative, airy, like ideas about what could be and what the future holds. And I think mine is going to be a lot more gritty. I truly believe y'all mentioned the map you mentioned the map of Deeper Joy several times, which I hope everyone will go and look at. Whole Church Religious Education also has a lot of supporting documents. And the map of Whole Church RE is one that translates the unique practices, the praxis of religious education for so many years, and all the amazing things that have grown there in that garden that has sometimes been forgotten, but often been allowed to flourish because of that. So this map of Whole Church RE looks like is what you'll find on the UUA page if you type in Whole Church RE. And it shows the way that we can translate the practices from religious education into the kind of words that you adults won't roll their eyes at and skip church because they think something's going to happen for kids. So that includes something like sacred stories, faithful conversations, creative contemplation, community making, public witness, and joyful connections. Those are all the ways that we can connect together around Whole Church RE differently than we have before and learn something from each other in those places. So I would say, looking at that map, what I would bring is a pocket forge. The forge is the symbol for community making in the whole church RE model. It means both how we make community together, and it also means how we make stuff together in community, like makerspace approaches, right?
Mhm.
And I have often said for many years, my wrought faith work named that when we are not on the forge together, beating out this, what it means to be Unitarian Universalism, we will struggle to be able to strengthen each other, to grow, to change. The forge was the first place where we got wrought iron, which was the first time we had iron that could be heated and reheated and would get stronger, not more brittle. And I see this symbol, this chalice, this pocket chalice, as a way to, this chalice anvil, because I always see it as both. I see that as a way to amplify our chalice icon. How would we bring with us not just the symbol of what we are and of the legacy we've been given? How would we bring a chalice anvil along with us when we wanted to remind ourselves that we are making the present and the future? We're making something that will last, hopefully, and we're building strengths with each other together that we couldn't do alone for the church that's praying for us to get there whole. So yeah, chalice anvil. That's what I'm bringing along to remind everybody they are active creators, co-creators of this faith within, among, and beyond in the world.
Okay, so we're taking the Kaleida periscope. Do I use it like a telescope? How do I do that on screen? We'll figure out. Edit it in post. We can put a real live periscope on screen. But so we're taking that. Joy, I've heard you name before how a lot of whole church RE is taking the learnings of the past, of that RE has developed while it has been kind of siloed, and sharing it with the rest of the congregation. And so we're taking the kaleidoscope and we're turning it towards our history as Unitarian Universalists. And so I'm kind of curious, how is this model, this vision of multi-generational, whole church, modular, all these words that we've been tossing around, how is it both a shift from what's come before, but also honoring so many different strands of our history? And I'm going to let you two decide who's got more pressing thoughts on that one.
Jennica, go first. I want to riff off you.
Oh my. I was going to say, Joy, go first. I want to riff off you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, it's so hard for me not to say too much about this. So I'm going to try to really focus in. It would be easier to talk about how whole church RE is not part of our history. Because if you just think about even just our theology, which includes a deep understanding of covenant as being the absolute essence, our unique competency, if you will, the difference, what made us an uncommon denomination for anybody who remembers the 90s campaign about UUism. Our unique thing is about being a covenantal community, not a creedal one. And that covenantal community piece of our theology says that although we may come together thinking differently, believing differently, needing different things, that there are some things we set aside in order to gain this experience of being bigger than we are alone and doing more than we could alone, and engaging in this collective meaning making and world building, to bring in a video game term. I just like, everybody's going to love that, I'm sure. But really, this world building that we do together covenantally is so unique to Unitarian Universalism, at least in the way we make it our explicit curriculum. And if we're going to talk about it so much, we better know how to do it. So for me, not only does whole church RE, the movement in exploring what little bits of it or more or a lot of it you might want to do as a congregation, not only does it so deeply reflect and live into and embody things like pluralism and interdependence and transformation. When we're together, those are all more possible. But also, our theology really, we can't move into covenantal community unless we figure out how to integrate the pieces of our community and honor not only the wisdom and the prophetic voice of our children, of our youth, but also of our elders in churches, of our leaders in churches. And in that way, covenant calls us to attend to the gaps that may have created fractures and fissures in our community, because now is the time when we need to gather in and really use our power in the most bountiful, abundant, and connective ways. So for me, Whole Church RE is nothing less than the flowering of all the promises that we have made. And it moves us from aspirational UUs and cosplaying UUs, sadly, sometimes, into really learning how to live into faith together. That to me is both deeply historical, it honors our legacy, and it gives us something for our descendants to be as proud of, hopefully, as we are, as we love to look back at the legacy of those who came before us in our UU heritage.
Amen, Joy. Yes. Okay. Amen. And thank you for giving me time to think and a lot to think about as well. I really appreciate that. You know, Unitarian Universalism is forming the faith along the way. Like religious educators often have a phrase of like building the plane while we're flying it, which is very dangerous. And I like to think we should not do that. We should choose a different metaphor, but I get the point. We're forming the faith as we're living it. And you know, it's already a whole year and a half old, but the shared values is such a perfect example of that. Like it's in the bylaws that we evolve. It's in the bylaws that we say, we're not just going to stick with one book for the rest of eternity. We're going to evolve as we go along. And I think there was something that came before the principles and the sources, and those evolved. Those weren't static the entire time they existed. And it's so very cool to me to think that the young people right now are growing up as we all are growing into these shared values. And they are the ones right now and in the future that are going to be, these values are going to be living in their bones, in their DNA, and in the way that they move in the world. So cool.
This is a great transition. And look, I even prepared my own chalice forge. I didn't have the chalice, but I have the candle. So this is my chalice forge here, because I like Jennica's talking about it here. I'm thinking about transformation as one of our UU values. And Joy is also talking about how, like, what are we leaving for our descendants? So with transformation as a UU value, what is the future that we're shifting towards and imagining with things like Whole Church and Deeper Joy? What is it shifting it towards? What are the transformations they'll bring us for the future? What in 100 years, when they're writing the biography and listening to this podcast for like the historical record, what will the congregations be like then?
Ember, Revelation is not sealed, so I'm not sure. I mean, I think the yeah. I think that the whole point of this is to move us from a place of feeling that we know exactly what to do in this moment and have a script for it. Some of us are moving away from more explicit scripted curriculum. Some churches are still finding that works great for them. But as we move away from a worship of the written word, as we move away from a desire for perfectionism, all those white supremacy culture things that exist in our congregations, not only just like, but also sometimes more than other places in society, we all have this work to do of dismantling white supremacy culture in ourselves and our congregations, and then to do the world building for beloved community. To me, I see this as a moment where we are willing to be radically inclusive preemptively, as C.B. Beale has introduced to this faith as such a prophetic naming. We're building something Jennica said we're building the plane as we fly, and to defend my religious educators' emphasis on safety and and authenticity. We've done that oftentimes because we have not been given a whole plane, right?
It's true,
And
yeah.
so, if if the congregation isn't going to help you get the kids and youth to faith development, to becoming you're going to figure stuff out, right? But I'd love for us to think about how right now we're not building a plane. Right now, we are making the tools together to empower whatever the next phase is. Because the sometimes the stubborn incapability in congregational culture to have a succession plan, to bring in the next generation and cultivate leadership and cultivate identity and cultivate covenant, can create real gaps. And so to me, Whole Church RE is this way in which we say there is so much wisdom and love at the center of this community. How can we amplify it, and what can we learn when we start to do it? And so in that way, it very much is an emergent strategy. I like to think that rather than the stuff we're putting in this backpack right now for the journey ahead, weighing our people down, we're instead giving them some of these magical tools, Ember, some of these magical things that they can transform, that they can adapt, and that they can make their own. As we really recognize that one of the greatest gifts of Unitarian Universalism is the way that we are a people who move, and that revelation is not sealed, and that we depend upon each generation deeply making Unitarian Universalism its own in order to realize the promise of Unitarian Universalism.
Yeah. Yeah. The last time Joy and I got to be on this podcast together, I think it was last season, or I don't know, 2 seasons ago even, where we got to talk about the shared value of, was it transformation?
Yeah.
And one of our favorite phrases is the idea of faith formation in a dying and transforming world. And so as I think about the next 100 years, we might be living in that. What is that? What? I can't remember the name of it, but it's like eco-punk, or what, solar punk. That's what it is. We might be living in this solar punk utopia that is the beautiful and magical version of the kaleidoscopic periscope. But we might also be like huddled around a trash fire can, fugitives hiding from our AI overlords, right? Like, well, it's probably going to be somewhere in between. And no matter what that future might look like, I think the tools that are needed today are the ones where we're practicing taking care of each other and keeping each other safe. Yes. Yeah. And that if that's what we're doing on Sunday morning or Wednesday night or whenever we're meeting together as Unitarian Universalists, we're practicing caring for one another and keeping each other safe, then it doesn't matter what the future looks like, because we have each other and we have the resilience that we need to be able to face the future.
Yeah. And for those people who say, well, we don't want our congregations to just be a place where people retreat from the world, that's a story that is passing from us. We don't live in that world anymore. When we come together in churches like a gym or rehab, the occupational therapy kind of thing, when we come together in church to build our muscles for the race, we're not sure what it's going to look like. I love this idea. That was a question. How would we do faith development in a dying and a transforming world? There's an implicit call there that we are the change. We are the people who get to decide, not just react. And I love the way that this whole church, religious education, deeper joy, collectivizing approach sets the stage and creates the containers from the top of the UUA, not because of power, but because it can free leaders to not have to be the lightning rod pushing a big new idea that causes anxiety. And some of these things will and can, but so does climate collapse and all these other things. As our youth have told us, they know all the things that are happening. I see this as a deeply salvific and liberatory response and a way to engage that ask our people, how could we create the church that will be needed and what are the tools? The more we
Mhm.
can get people together, the more places they have to organize and have their kids do something cool and learn how to protest and
Mhm.
all of these things that and learn how to make stuff and fix stuff, which we brought into whole church RE, learn how to cook food. These are all sources of faith development. As we dismantle white supremacy culture in our churches and in ourselves, we start to understand that church could be so much more. And when it has that expansive willingness to be so much more, all of a sudden what you see emerge is great ideas about how to amplify the power of Unitarian Universalism and of covenantal community. I love to think of our people coming together and getting better at humaning, because if that's not faith development, I don't know what is. And I know for sure that no matter what the world is going to bring, we need to know how to live together, how to love each other, and how to act in ways that are grounded in our values. And I think that what we're doing here helps everyone do that and experience the dynamic joy of that
Mhm.
more than some of the ways we've done it in the past. So to me, this is a freeing thing and a hopeful thing.
Well, folks,
Okay, chills, chills, chills. And I'm writing down dynamic joy because what I am that like we're building community in this through this community building map to deeper joy. And I'm now at the point where it's like, so what? For what? What is this community for? And it's moving from deeper joy into dynamic joy.
Well, I'm glad that you like that, but I actually have that copyrighted already. So let's have our people talk.
yes, I'll let you two handle your copyrights off screen. But as we prepare to wrap up, I'd love to, the three. I'm pretty sure the three of us could probably talk for 4 hours, easily without stopping, based on personal experience. But I'd like to offer a chance for final words. So if you could offer maybe like a practice, a reminder phrase, or even just an example of how our listeners can bring this practice of whole church religious education, of deeper joy and community building, how we could bring that into our own lives and communities. What would that be in a short, pithy way of saying such a thing?
You're first this time.
Well, Joy talked about kitchen connections, which is a game in Deeper Joy, probably in the Stretching River section, because you're not only you're doing something together that changes you while you're doing it. That's sort of what the Stretching River games are all about. And I think that would be my pithy ideas, like get into the kitchen together and make something.
I love that. One of the resources that's already up for Whole Church RE is Sidewalk Chalk Theology. And it came about first in 2016 when, the first inkling of some dark times ahead happened. And it's just one of these easy ways to lean into what Whole Church RE feels like. And you can put it after church or between services or whatever. It could be your RE for the day instead of classes. Um, Having people get together and write down on some signs or on a piece of paper or something, some of the things that they think the people in the community might need to hear from our theology of love and justice and all that, and just equipping people to go outside the church and into their neighborhood, whatever's appropriate and safe, and sort of show up and speak up for our values. I live in the South, so being able to claim religion is really important for our kids. And the idea of a bunch of UUs going outside the church, using sidewalk chalk to write messages of love and solidarity and liberation, and helping each other do that, because some of the people can't maybe squat down. The kids are writing for the elders and stuff. This is such a simple community way to live into what we haven't done enough of in the past, and also a way to really live out loud as Unitarian Universalists. So that's just one example that I would say that could be a great way to ease in, particularly in this moment where we may be feeling a need to do public witness. And there are ways that we can do that are really developmentally appropriate and theologically inspiring.
Yes, Joy. Okay, so I offered something that was kind of an among activity.
Right.
You offered something that was a beyond
Among and
activity.
beyond, yes, right.
Yes. Ember Oak, do you have kind of a within idea to go with what Joy's always talking about, faith formation within, among, and beyond?
Broken record. Our faith
Well,
development has to happen within, then among, and beyond, and it's all connected.
perhaps this podcast is even an example of within, because having conversations about topics are very important for having open and honest conversations is super vital to the communities that we are building. And that is why I'm thankful to get to be part of this podcast and get to hold this space and offer the possibility of exploring new ideas. And so there's my within.
I've heard so many religious educators name that, podcasts like this and other things that happen, like threshold conversations, for example, that they can watch, listen to, Q&A, really inspire their own faith formation. And we, as leaders, we don't always get a chance to do our own faith development. So I think you're right. Even though it could seem to be among because we're talking, and it could seem to be beyond because we're sending this message out to the world. Yeah, there's a way in which we grow ourselves from hearing, listening, witnessing, and having that wonderful development that happens only when we're together. That's within, among, and beyond. It's transcendent, y'all.
And don't worry, that doesn't mean that you need to go start a podcast. I mean, if you feel particularly called, everybody seems to feel particularly called towards starting a podcast these days. But this just means having honest conversations with your friends and with your community.
Does this mean you're not looking for a new host, and people shouldn't bomb your inbox with requests to join?
I mean, maybe for season 6, but we have decided that season 5 is a solo Ember season. So, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to leave, 2 thumbs up to celebrate the single solo Ember hosting season.
Yeah. Hey, are y'all going to take care of yourselves? Are y'all going to take care of yourselves today and this week?
I have to. I can't afford not to.
Right?
Yeah.
Just make sure you do.
Yes.
There's so much going on, and we are coming together to remember the joy, right? And the possibility and the promise, but it's also a really tough time. And I don't want to leave without reminding ourselves and anyone who's listening to this to take care of your people and yourself, and look for the moments of joy which strengthen us for the hard work.
Right. We are so thankful for our listeners and all those who tune in. And thank you for tuning in for this first episode of the 5th season of Just Breathe. Be sure to subscribe, leave 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. I use Apple Podcasts, so that's the one that I know how to use. Do whatever you do on Spotify. I do not use Spotify. But also subscribe to us on YouTube, where you can watch the video versions of this podcast. We also have presence on Instagram, and that's Just Breathe Pod. That's just with 2 U's, and breathe with HE on the end there, and then pod, all one word. And make sure to spread the word about your favorite Unitarian Universalist podcast.
Yeah, and we're going to put all the links in the show notes that we've mentioned today so that people can also go deeper with this conversation, right?
Yes, make sure to check out the show notes for all of the relevant information that's been shared about in today's session.
Bless y'all.